All right. Hello. All right. We're going to be talking today about what Matt Walsh said on a recent episode of his. And it's not really bad. I don't want to give the impression that it's terrible because it's not. And I do have a pretty aggressive title, but it is something to bring out, something to address and not simply let it sit. So I don't, just to clarify, I don't not like Matt Walsh. I do like Matt Walsh. I like Michael Knowles. I like what they say, generally speaking. Obviously, not everything, but most things they say I agree with. But in this case, it's something that I think needs to be addressed, and it starts like a lot of things in my state with my governor doing something really crazy. I'm not going to show you the clip, but I'm going to give you, because I do think the clip is a bit odd. It's really bizarre, and if you want to watch it, you can watch it on Matt Walsh's episode. But I will give you the clip from Matt Walsh where he concisely states it.
The video features Liz Plank, I assume that's Liz Plank, on her knees, eyes closed, opening her mouth to receive a Dorito chip from Gretchen Whitmer, who feeds her and then stares weirdly into the camera. That's the video.
So, yeah, as describing it, you can, as a Catholic, there is a lot of elements that we would receive, like reception on the tongue, especially kneeling, comes to mind. Now, it doesn't always come to mind, but it is something that the first few things that he states on the tongue, someone placing something in someone else's mouth, there's very few things in our culture that generally talks about. Apparently online, specifically on Twitter, this became quite a buzz. And it became a thing where everybody's talking about it. And a lot of Catholics are pushing the idea that this is what he's talking about. Matt disagrees with this being something, disagrees with it being inherently a Catholic mockery. But all right, well, I'll let him explain it. So this isn't going to just be a back and forth video. I'm not going to be doing that the whole time, but I do want to not put words in his mouth, and I want to let him say it so that I can address the point towards the end. So here's the next point.
It obviously doesn't have the bizarrely sexualized tone that this video has, but receiving communion by mouth and kneeling is something that is nearly exclusive to the traditional Latin Mass at this point.
Right. So in particular, that is what I wanted to address. The fact that he claims that the TLM is primarily where reception on the tongue happens. So he does address the Novus Ordo, and he addresses the Novus Ordo in a very, I want to say a direct way, but really it's more of an indirect way.
Every once in a while, if you go to the Novus Ordo Mass, you'll see someone receive communion that way.
And so, all right, so this is the main point. This is what I want to address, because obviously, as someone who goes to the Novus Ordo, both knees down. Yes, that's true. Yeah. But as someone who goes to a Novus Ordo Mass currently, I used to go to a TLM. I did not stop going to the TLM because of the people. It's because I moved. So it's not. So I don't want to give the impression that I left the TLM for bad reasons. I go to the Novus Ordo, and at the Novus Ordo, over the past 5 years, we went from being a place that had a few people receive on the tongue to a majority of people receiving on the tongue and kneeling. And so I would definitely say that we're an outlier in terms of the Novus Ordo. But when you consider the fact that the TLM accounts for about 5% of parishes, of the population that's practicing, that proportion is probably a little higher. That being said, if you're a practicing Catholic, reception on the tongue, especially in parishes that have younger priests, is not unusual. It is actually very common. It is not something that I would say a majority of people do at Novus Ordo. I don't think that's accurate. And we don't exactly have statistics on this, right? Like this isn't exactly this isn't exactly something that we can just, I mean, we can do a survey on it and people will give self-reported answers for it. But the problem here is that it's kind of a waste of money, right? We may be able to find it, Pew may be able to do it, but it's not something that I think is worthy of our money to ask. There is a movement that is happening, though. There is a where tradition and reverence is being brought back into the Novus Ordo. When you like when you go to different parishes, if one parish like has people receiving on the tongue and it's a Novus Ordo parish, in a lot of cases it seems to spread. Now, if it's TLM, it seems pretty isolated. And the reason for that is that those that go to the TLM don't always go to the Novus Ordo and receive there in the same way that those that go to the Novus Ordo as their primary parish then spread out. So that's more of an anecdotal understanding that I have, where the spreading based off the NO versus the TLM is happening. My main point is the TLM is not the only place that receives on the tongue, and it's not unusual. Like my like I don't want to pretend like give the impression that it, again, it's like a few people receive on the tongue. It's like, no, like there's a substantial, again, if the priests are younger, there's a substantial portion of the population that does in fact receive on the tongue and that does receive kneeling. And our parish is an example of that. It just depends on where you are. And in the state of Michigan, given that this is the governor, right, of Michigan that did this, it's going to be noticeable because especially in the Archdiocese of Detroit and Lansing and Kalamazoo, like in Grand Rapids, like the Novus Ordos are not this, like, I guess I don't want to give the impression that it's the same throughout because it's not. Like it's a regional thing that happens. Like especially when it comes to younger priests coming in. And so in our neck of the woods, right, like Michigan, reception on the tongue is a Catholic thing. It is understood to be Catholic. It is a very much a Catholic thing. And so if the governor of Michigan is doing that, there's a pretty good chance that she's doing it from the stand, like from a lot of standpoints, like especially since it's a feminist TikToker. She is in the place of a man, right? Like she's in the place of the priest who's in persona Christi. So she is being a woman, putting it down, you know, giving a Doritos and giving to this young lady in the same way as reception on the tongue. Like it's not a leap to say that she's mocking the faith. Or at least it's not a leap to say that she seems to be mocking the faith, and it's a credible accusation. Because again, the state of Michigan and those that practice here generally do have a reception on the tongue. I don't want to say like higher rate, but we kind of do. And part of that has to do with the fact that we as a state have significantly more TLMs than other areas, other states in the country. And so like the Archdiocese of Detroit has several, Kalamazoo has several, Lansing, Grand Rapids, like we have a lot more TLMs than most states. And that does, like over time, that does affect the local population to where it's like, oh, like if you know someone who goes to the TLM, you know, which happens all the time, people have conversations with them and they engage and ask very basic questions such as, how do you receive on the tongue? Why do you receive on the tongue? And there are several answers to that question. The important thing here is that it's not isolated. Like the idea that TLM goers just stay in their own parish and they don't branch out or talk to friends that are in other parishes is like asinine. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm not saying Matt Walsh says that. That's not what I'm critiquing about Matt Walsh. My point is just Matt Walsh, I think, is wrong in understanding exactly what is happening in the Novus Ordo, especially with areas with younger and younger priests, which is starting to happen all over the place. And especially from but I did want to bring up in particular the issue with Governor not Granholm, Governor Whitmer, because she is from my state, and because I know our populations. Like of my 5 kids, 3 of them have been baptized in separate dioceses. So like I've traveled around quite a bit in my state and the different parishes, so I'm very familiar with what's going on here. But the so I guess I just wanted to point that out. However, there is a very important thing that Matt brings to the table in the sense of like just letting people know, and that's this.
It often makes the priest or Eucharistic minister visibly uncomfortable because they aren't used to that level of reverence at a Novus Ordo Mass. But that's a subject for another time.
That is such an important thing, because that absolutely does happen. There are parishes I will not go to because I know the extraordinary ministers are let's just say, the main form of distributing communion. Or yeah, the extraordinary ministers are the main form of distributing communion, and the priest is kind of going all over the place. I'm not going to go there, and because it is a problem. Like extraordinary ministers should not have a problem distributing communion on the tongue. If they have a problem, they shouldn't be extraordinary ministers. And Pope Paul VI makes it very clear that when it comes to reception on the tongue, it's not to be like pariahed, or you're not supposed to ostracize them. You're not supposed to treat them differently. If you have a problem distributing communion on someone's tongue, that's not the person's fault that has the right to receive communion. That is your fault. And you need to actually talk to the priest and be like, hey, how do you do this? Or seriously consider stop doing it, because that is an actual issue. Like, you are distributing God, and it creates a real problem, because you're taking a moment that should be about peace and embracing of God in a very profound and intimate way, and you're making it an event, like a negative event. So yeah, if you're an extraordinary minister listening to this, yeah, that's where I go. That's my opinion on it, because your responsibility is not just simply to, like, you're not distributing crackers. Like, it's an important thing, and it's a real problem that most people have, that want to go outside of their parish and visit other people in other parishes for a variety of reasons, right? Like baptism, communion on the hand, or I'm sorry, baptism, confirmation, like a number of those things will draw people to outside their parish, and it rightfully so. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, like, remember last time, honey, like when we came here, like the priest did X, Y, and Z, and it was kind of weird, and the extraordinary ministers did something. And so, like, you'll be hesitant to actually go up and receive communion because of the situation that the extraordinary ministers put you in. I make it a point to almost always go to the priest. I will not, like, if I'm visiting someplace, I make it a point to always go to the priest. Even if he's floating around, he's going to stop somewhere, and you just wait. Like, and, I got a pew full of people. I've got 5 kids with my wife, and so it's 7 of us. We will wait until he stops moving, and we will go to him. Because we believe very strongly in the understanding that the priest is the one, like, in persona Christi, and we should, like, from our understanding, from our prudential decision, that's who we're going to receive communion from. And so being a little legalistic in my word choices, but but besides that, that was all I really wanted to say in terms of what was stated by Matt Walsh, I did want to bring up that StreamYard has, so I do this on StreamYard. I am, let me get rid of this. I do this on StreamYard. So this is something I pay for. This is a hobby of mine. I don't make a whole bunch of money doing this. I think I make about $2, $2 or $3 over the course of a month. It's not a lot. And so StreamYard has gone from being about $19 a month to being $45 a month, which is over 100% increase. They more than doubled. So I am going to cancel it outside of one condition. So, and that condition is if people were to become members on the channel and to justify paying that, if you like the live streams, like that would be where the justification comes from. I'm not saying this to get pity or whatever. That's not my intention. It's just, this is a passion project of mine. This is not something that I can put a whole lot of resources in from my income. I have 5 kids and they go to private school and, you know, a number of other things. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm just begging for money, right? Like that's not, it's just, it's a very practical thing of mine. And so if so many people, I didn't do the calculation. If so many people become members, then I can justify doing these live streams. And if I go over that, so in the case that I do go over that will go back into the channel. So like it will go back into the channel to make make different videos. So it'll go towards something like, say, doing data polls from Kara to do analysis to then bring you more detailed analysis about what's going on, especially when it comes to, like, for example, I'm sure a few of you would like to know where most of our ordinations are coming from in the United States. You know, which archdiocese is producing the most given their population, or which one, like which diocese is producing the most priests given their population, right? So like if you have a population, for example, Diocese of Lincoln has 100,000 Catholics. They had 5 ordinations last year. Or I'm sorry, this year in 2024. The Archdiocese of Detroit, my diocese, has about 900,000 to 1 million Catholics. We had 5 ordinations. Which one did better given their population? The Diocese of Lincoln. And so like that's just how that works. So like that would be the type of analysis that I would do, except I would look at everybody. So I'm just letting you know if joining the channel, like doing memberships, goes above a certain point to justify not only StreamYard but data polls, that's where it's going to go. So yeah, so like that's kind of where I'm at right now. Trying to think if there's any last minute thing. So are you thinking of starting a Patreon, or would it be easier to just have a donation to support the channel? So okay, so the Patreon, there are certain, okay, so the problem that I have with Patreon is this came out when a lot of the woke stuff was happening, where the woke stuff happened and Patreon like backed out of a lot of things because like, for example, Tim Gordon, I think, got dropped by Patreon because he was talking about the woke crap that was happening. And he ended up switching to, I think, Subscribestar. So that has a similar layout. I can set up a Subscribestar. I think they take a minimal amount. I don't know exactly what the percentages are. I just know that when it comes to YouTube, because I pretty much only use YouTube for this, it comes out to be a 70-30 split. So if you donate $10, I get 7 of it. And that's just the way YouTube has it structured. So I'm trying to find like a good place to not have it so expensive. I might do locals. I might look at locals, but those are my options that I'm looking at. But that's where I'm at. So thanks, Candy. Thank you for listening to me, and support your priests. And we are moving. Like there is actual movement, and so just pay attention, and I think you'll start to see it more and more, especially with veils. So thank you for watching, and have a great day.